Welcome to the Healing While Discovering Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Michelle. I'm an intuitive transformational coach, certified life coach, certified NLP practitioner, and speaker. I've spent the last 22 plus years helping myself and my clients learn how to create their own happiness and live more abundant lives. In this time, I've also overcome and healed from child sexual molestation, a compulsive eating disorder, hunger, and homelessness. Now it's your turn to move forward with your life and heal from childhood traumas or past experiences. In this podcast, I'll share how I was able to overcome all of my past struggles, as well as my personal stories of overcoming jealousy, loneliness, resentment, and bitterness, and how I learned to forgive. I'll also help you explore your shadow self, deal with having low or no self-esteem, and address feelings of not being worthy or loved. Using my personal experiences and extensive training, as well as stories of grief, loss, depression, and anxiety from my guests, I'll help you change your life and finally heal. Hey loves, welcome to episode number 3 of the Healing While Discovering Yourself podcast. If this is your first time here, I want to welcome you and thank you so much for being here. I also want to encourage you to listen to some of the other episodes before you decide whether or not you want to continue listening. Like, don't just judge it based off this one episode. Go back and listen to some of the other episodes before you make a decision. And I hope you find it to your liking, but you know what? You might not, and that's okay too. But if you have been here before, then I want to welcome you back and just thank you so much for coming back. I know that there's so many other options on the market for you to listen to as far as podcasts is concerned. So I thank you so much for being here and just spending time with me. And this goes for you, whether you are new, you're a first-time listener, or whether this is your multi-listener. I really appreciate your presence and I can feel you. And I just want to let you know that I am doing this for you. And so I love the fact that y'all are here, that all of y'all are here. So thank you. Thank you so much. Today's episode, it may, for some people, it may be a bit deep because we're going to talk about generational curses and more specifically breaking generational curses so that you can create generational blessings. And the most fundamental thing that I want you to know about, the self-discovery journey, the healing journey, and the healing process is that as you begin your journey and as you begin healing, what you are doing is breaking generational curses and generational bonds, right? You're breaking the cords that have attached themselves to you, to your DNA, to your ancestors, to your family line, right? So this healing journey or the healing process, it's not just for you, but it's for future generations. And this can be true even if you don't have your own children, right? I know I do have some listeners who are not necessarily parents. For whatever reason, they may become parents. Some people don't want to be parents. Like, I get that. This is no judgment. But when you heal yourself, again, not only are you just healing like what happened to you in this lifetime, but you're breaking the curses that have continued to happen throughout the generations. And when you break the curses, you set yourself up to create generational blessings. And a lot of times people talk about, generational curses, and they just leave it at that. But I believe that some of the luckiest people in the world, they're not lucky for luck's sake. They're lucky because they're always looking for the opportunity of more. They're lucky because they're looking for the opportunity to learn. They're looking for the opportunity to grow. They're looking for the opportunity to receive more. And so when we think about breaking generational curses, it does not just stop there. But not only are we just breaking the generational curses, but we are setting ourselves up or creating the space or the opportunity to start something new. And that something new could be a blessing or something that also continues, just like the curses continue throughout the generation, time after time. The blessings can also continue through the generations, time after time. Right. And so I just want to share with you a personal story of my own, which I will do throughout this podcast because, I believe in sharing my stories so that there is some real life example. Very rarely do I share my client's story. And that's for a number of reasons. But the number one reason why I hardly ever share my clients' experiences, and I'd rather share my own, is because the nature of the work that I do with my clients is so personal. And it's so intimate. And a lot of my clients are very private people. And I would not want them to think for 1 second that something they say to me in confidence, something they say to me in private will ever get shared with anyone else, especially without their permission. And that's true. Even if I don't give a specific name, I will hardly ever give specific names of my clients because, again, I don't want them to ever think that what they tell me in private, that it will ever show up anywhere. So that's the number one reason why I share a lot of my own personal stories. And the second reason why I share a lot of my personal stories is because I want you to know that I have been where you are. A lot of times, we follow influencers and we follow coaches and we see them and we think, oh my gosh, like they have their life together, like things seem so perfect for them, when the reality is that that's not true. Things are not perfect for them. They just don't necessarily share that part of themselves with you. And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever. It just simply is. But for me, I want you to know that I have been where you are. I've been in battle. And I have the scars to prove it. So that's why oftentimes I would rather share my own personal stories as opposed to sharing my client's story. Now, there may be the occasion where, and I'm going completely off track, but I really feel like I have to put this out there. There may be the occasion that I may share a client's story or experience, but that is with their full consent and permission, and they know, and they're not ashamed of it or anything else. But for the most part, I will always use my own personal examples. So, one of the generational curses that was in my family throughout the generation is there are actually multiple. There are addictive personalities that, run in my family, although I don't like to use that because I think a lot of people use that. It runs in my family as an excuse to not take responsibility for their lives. It's like it may run in your family, but it doesn't mean that you have to engage, right? You may have the propensity because of your DNA and because of your genes and all of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to manifest in your life. You do have power over that. You are the creator of your own reality. And so just because something runs in your family, addictive personalities run in my family, it doesn't mean that I'm predestined to have an addictive personality. If I know that addictive personalities exist, then that means that there are some things that I need to do to be proactive so that I don't get caught up in it, right? Like every once in a while, I love coffee, but every once in a while I'll go, a month or two without drinking it because I don't want to be addicted to it. And I've shared publicly, my battle with a compulsive eating disorder. And, I got caught up in that. And thankfully, I learned to heal myself from that. But being aware that the propensity to take on an addiction is there, it just simply means that I have to be proactive. And so understanding that, like addictive personalities, another thing that was prevalent in my family was this. And if you have children and you don't talk about the birds and the bees with them, you may want to cover their ears, but this sexual perversion, right? Like this appetite for sex, it was prevalent in my family. And what's interesting is that it was prevalent on my mother's side and on my father's side, right? And so when you combine that energy, think about what that creates. And I think about who I could have become had I not taken the time to discover myself and heal myself, like the person that I could have been, the activities that I could have engaged in had I not taken a moral inventory and understood what the driving force behind some of my decisions were. And because I have done that, now that no longer hangs over my children. But not only that it no longer hangs over my children, but it extends to my nieces. It extends to my nephews, right? Like just because it ran in my family, it didn't or doesn't mean that I have to be okay with that. But guess what? That started with me going on my own journey of self-discovery. That started with me taking the time to begin my own healing journey and understanding what the motivation was behind a lot of decisions that I made, having an understanding of why I did the things that I did. Why was I seeking this? Why was I seeking that? Why was this important to me? Why was it important for me to do these things? Right? But I had to be willing to sit and number one, ask the hard question. Why is this important to me? Why do I do this? And not from a perspective of judgment, but asking myself, what does this mean? What does it mean that I do this? What does it mean that I do that? And then number two, sitting with the question and waiting to receive the answer. Because your healing is in the answer. But even greater than that your healing is in asking the question. The minute you ask the question, your healing begins. And then when you sit and you wait for the answer, then things become clear. And when you pursue the things that have been revealed to you in the answer, and you consistently pursue those things, then you become a healed person. And you're healed in that area that you struggled with. And because you've healed that, you've basically uprooted. You pulled out at the root the cause, right? Because of the law of cause and effect, which means that every cause has an effect and every effect has a cause. You are cause. Your thoughts are cause, right? And when you get to the root, which is cause, then the effect is no more. There is no effect because there is no cause, right? And when you're healed, you pull up the root and therefore you break the generational curses. Curse or curses, whatever you got in your family. Most of us have curses, plural, right? If we're being honest, and I love honesty, it's one of my core values. Integrity being number one. But when you pull it up at the root, then you break the curse. And then you have to decide what you want to do with it, right? Because you've pulled it up at the root. And if you know anything about gardening, when you pull something at the root outside, like in the grass, it leaves a hole where that thing was. right? It leaves a big hole. And that's where you can plant the seeds of blessings. That's where you can say, you know what? Instead of sexual perversion, I'm going to plant some love there. Instead of addiction, which is caused through some sort of trauma, abuse, instead of abuse, I'm going to plant some peace there, thereby creating a generational blessing. I'm going to plant some joy there. I'm going to plant some abundance there, which will then take root and create generational blessings. But you have to be willing. And this is where some people go wrong, y'all. You have to be willing to admit to the generational curse or curses. You have to be willing to sit with yourself, right? And really, truly get an understanding of what the energy is that presides over your family, or what the energy is that presides over your lineage. You have to be willing to look at mama. You have to be willing to look at dad, right? You have to be willing to look at, Nana, Mimi, Gigi, the grandma, the many names grandmas have. Pawpaw. We used to call my grandfather Pawpaw, right? You have to be willing to look at those things that hang over them. Look at some of their past behaviors and identify those behaviors in yourself and understand that those behaviors have a root. And the root of those behaviors, it's not necessarily in you, but it's generational. Yes. Are there some roots in you that you have planted? Absolutely. And you've watered and you've let go that are detrimental to your own growth and development? Yes. And you have to identify those. Because if you don't, you're going to pass those on to your children and your grandchildren and your nieces and your nephews and those who you have influence over in your life. So you have to be willing to examine all of that. Look at all of the behavior. Look at the things that cause you turmoil. Look at the people who have influence over you in your life, and really truly ask yourself, what does this mean? What am I making it mean? Is this something that I want to continue on with? Is this a behavior that I'm okay with? Is this an attitude that I'm okay with? Is this a personality that I'm okay with? Does this energy sit well with me? Like, these are the things that you have to be willing to ask yourself if you want to break generational curses, because it is 100% possible, 100% possible for you to be the one to break the generational curse. There have been so many generational curses that I have broken in my lifetime. There's so many things that my children won't have to deal with, poverty being one of them. There's so many things that my children don't have to deal with that I had to deal with. There's so many things that my husband has had to deal with that our children don't have to deal with because he's broken the generational curse, right? Not only have we broken it, but we've set them up with things that they can do instead. Instead of pouring judgment and fear with our parenting style, which was put into me as a kid, fear and judgment, we parent them with love and acceptance. And we tell them that, there's nothing that you can do that would stop us from loving you, right? There's nothing that my children will ever do that will stop me from loving them. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm a ride or die mom, because I'm not a ride or die for anyone. Like, I will only die when it's my time to die. So if you want me to ride with you and die with you, I'm not that mama. I'm not the ride or die mama. If you have done something that is out of pocket, I'm going to let you know. But I let them know that, and I show them through love, right? Like when they do something, instead of judging them. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not, y'all, because I mess up. I do. I really do. I mess up, and I have to ask my children for forgiveness when I get so caught up in my own, feelings and emotions, right? But for the most part, when I am interacting and engaging with my children, it's really truly from a place of love and acceptance. And so when they do something, instead of like putting the hammer down on them and saying, you shouldn't do it, why did you do? We actually have a conversation about it. Why do you think you did that? What do you think was driving you to make that decision? Is there anything that I can do in the future to help you make a better decision, right? Like, I know the answer to these things, but I want them to know that our default for parenting them is not fear and is not judgment, so that as they get older and they engage in other relationships with people, they're not engaging in relationships from a place of fear and judgment. And when they have children, they're not, parenting their children from a place of fear and judgment, but it's a place of love and acceptance. Right. My kids are only 10 and 12, so I don't know how this is all going to turn out. I really don't. I don't know. This could blow up in my face. Right. I don't know that, but I have the faith and the confidence to know that I am doing the best that I can with the information that I have now. And I'm loving them the best way that I know how, because I love myself unconditionally. And because I love myself unconditionally, I love them unconditionally. And what that means, y'all, is that I love them how they need to be loved. I don't force my feelings or anything on them. As a matter of fact, I recently shared that, the problem a lot of people have is that they love people how they themselves wish they were loved. But people don't want to be loved how you wished you were loved. And our children are no different. People want to be loved how they want to be loved. For example, my daughter, when I was growing up, I wanted, I wish my mother hugged me more and told me she loved me more, right? And so when I had children, I was like, I'm going to love them and hug them, and they're going to know that I love them, blah, 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 all these things, right? And I would do that with my children, love and hug on them. And as my daughter got older, she was like, yeah, mom, like, you hug and you kiss me too much. Right. And if I'm honest, because I told y'all I'm not perfect, I was like tiny bit offended when she said that, because she kind of was like, and she was respectful, but, just kind of like, it's like annoying, because you hug and kiss me all the time. And at first I was like, oh, wow. To myself. But at the time, even with her, I was like, oh my gosh, sweet pea, I don't want to be annoying to you. I just love you so much. And that's why I do it. And so I stopped. And now every time I want to hug her or kiss her, I'll be like, can I just kiss you on the cheek, or can I hug you? Right. Because I was projecting the love that I wish I had on her, but that's not how she wanted to be loved. And part of the reason why she doesn't want to be loved with all these hugs and kisses is because I have affectionately shown her that I loved her. So I don't need to reinforce anything like that or put that on her, because she knows, right? And so when she has children, because of this experience, she may not overly kiss them, right? I don't know, right? I don't know. But I do know that if I continued loving her the way that I wished I was loved instead of the way she wants to be loved, it could have ruined our relationship, right? And instead of hugs and kisses being a form of affection and love, they become forms of resentment and frustration and anger, because every time I did that, it annoyed her. And because she shared with me that she doesn't necessarily like it, she could get angry, right? And so this is how we get to where we are when we try to project how we wish we were loved on other people. And we can't do that. And so if we want to, break generational curses. We have to heal ourselves because it is in the healing process that we break the curses. We must go a step further. And instead of leaving that space empty, we must decide to fill it with love and joy and peace and abundance and wealth and success, because that is the beginning of generational blessings. So I hope that, this was helpful to you. I'm going to ask you that if you have enjoyed it, I would love, love, love for you to share it with someone who you think can benefit from it. I would also love for you to rate and review the podcast and tag me in your stories on Instagram, tag me on your posts on Facebook, tag me. I am on Instagram at Andrea Michelle Consulting, on Facebook as Andrea Michelle. Just rate and review it. Just do all the things, y'all. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen and, really, really thank you for being open. Thank you for not just, perhaps looking at the title thinking, I'm not ready for that. I don't want to deal with that. Right. I appreciate you because I've been on this journey for 22 years and I know that it is a challenging journey, and I would be lying to you if I said, oh, it's easy. It isn't. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing in advance, rating and reviewing in advance, tagging me in your stories in advance. I appreciate you so much. And what I want you to know is that the love in me salutes the love in you. Take care. Until next time. Hey loves, are you looking for a safe place to hang out while you're healing with other like-minded individuals? If so, then I would love for you to join my private Facebook community called Healing While Discovering Yourself, named after the podcast. This community is for those who are truly seeking a safe place to heal and also show up authentically. If this interests you, then I'm going to invite you to go to Facebook/groups/healing while discovering. I look forward to seeing you in the group. Tony Robbins said, the quality of your life is a direct reflection of the quality of the questions you're asking yourself. And that's why I'm inviting you to download my free guide called 5 Powerful Questions to Ask Yourself to help you take back control of your life. In this guide, you will learn how to shift your mood, break negative thought patterns, and identify beliefs and stories so that you can explore the truthfulness of these stories. Go to andreamichelle.com/powerful to download this free guide today.